At UU right now, we're studying Venerable's book, Working with Anger, and we're currently looking at chapter 11, which is called Meeting the Enemy. And I'll give you a hint, it's nobody outside. So here we're talking about the self-centered attitude. And I think it's a state of mind that there can be a lot of confusion about, so I thought to just share some reflections that I came to. So she begins the chapter by acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of emphasis these days on self-love, loving ourselves. And so it's important for us to understand what that actually means. From a Buddhist point of view, there are two types of self-love. There's a positive self-love, and then there's a self-love that's not quite as positive. So it's important that we distinguish those two because the first one's going to bring happiness and the second one probably won't. From the Buddhist point of view, love is the wish for ourselves and others to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And so that's really pointing to our own mind, having positive states of mind that lead to positive actions. It can include wishing for ourselves to have nice conditions, a nice place to live, nice friends, nice food, that sort of thing as well. But more importantly, it's focused on the internal conditions of happiness that will bring a lasting kind of reliable happiness. And it's the basis for valid and stable self-confidence. Because when we're acting from a loving place, then we can sleep well at night. We know we've done our best that day. We've done our best not to harm anyone. And so we're mindful. It's a good reason to be mindful throughout the day, to just check up to see, well, what's my motivation? What's going on in my mind? The not-so-positive type of self-love is actually self-centered thought, self-centeredness. And it's the thought that thinks my happiness is more important than yours. Anybody have that thought from time to time? Our happiness is important. That's a fact. Our happiness is important. But is our happiness more important than someone else's? The person sitting next to us or any member in our family? Is our happiness more important than theirs? Can we actually say that our happiness is more important than any stranger we meet on the street? Or can we honestly say that our happiness is more important than someone that we have difficulty with? It's really a good thing to check up and see what's going on there. So in the Buddhist world, this not-so-positive type of self-love is called the self-centered attitude or the self-centered thought, self-centeredness. And just like anger, self-centered thought is adventitious. We had a discussion about this and decided, yes, it's adventitious. Sometimes the self-centered thought is there. It arises due to causes and conditions. Sometimes it's not there. And just like anger, we want to identify this particular state of mind so that we can understand it, so that we can recognize it when it arises, and so that we can antidote it. And I think we have to be really careful when talking about self-centeredness because many of us are already very hard on ourselves. There's a lot of criticism, judgment. And so describing this self-centered attitude can easily bring up things like that, more self-criticism, judgment, guilt, feeling bad about ourselves. And that's not the intention of working with this, identifying this thought. So we need to be really aware of why we're interested in looking at this state of mind. And from a Buddhist point of view, especially the Mahayana point of view, the main reason that we're trying to identify this and counter it is because it restricts our ability to develop heartfelt love and compassion and bodhicitta, the altruistic intention, which is our main motivation that we're cultivating. In addition to that, it also brings about a lot of our afflictions in combination with self-grasping ignorance and other afflictions. And so the more confidence we have in that, the more conviction we have in that reality, both that it blocks our altruistic attitude as well as creating suffering for ourselves with different afflictions, then the more energy we'll have to counter it. When I first started working with self-centered attitude in my own meditation many years ago, I picked it right up and I used it kind of aggressively towards myself, I have to say. Whatever habits we have before we come to Buddhism, we tend to use Buddhism in the same way. And so, we can flog ourselves, oh, that's so self-centered of me. And I'm not sure that was the intention of the Buddha. For a long time, I really couldn't see that the self-centered thought was separate from myself. It was something that Venerable Tarpa and I were talking about at lunch the other day. had a similar experience. But over the years, with further purification and personal healing work, I can now see that self-centeredness is just another advantageous state of mind, just like anger. When the conditions are there, it arises. When they're not there, it doesn't arise. And I remember when I used to do Tonglen, and you're supposed to imagine breathing in someone else's negativity or their suffering, and you imagine that it strikes at the self-centered black lump at your heart. I always was a little bit nervous about that because I wasn't quite sure what I was attacking. It seemed so integrated with myself at that point. But lately, how I've come to think about it is that when I'm bringing in other people's suffering or their difficulties, really what I'm trying to attack are the karmic seeds, the negative karmic seeds, or the contaminated karmic seeds in my own mind stream that have to do with self-centeredness. And for some reason, that has really allowed me to just relax with that practice. I find it much more gentle and appealing these days. So let me just talk a little bit about how self-centeredness operates so that you too can maybe find it a little more easy to identify it and see when it's operating, and then really check up in your own experience to see, does it have these detrimental effects? The self-centered thought is that little thought that says, look out for yourself. No one else is going to do it. Take care of number one. Sounds kind of like our national theme right now, but so it pretends to be our best friend, doesn't it? It says, look out for yourself, like as if it's looking out for our welfare. But when getting our own happiness as our main motivation, it really creates a very narrow focus. And this is something to really identify clearly. When self-centeredness is active, you can bet that the main purpose, the main focus of the mind is I, me, and mine. My tribe, my people, my happiness, what's going to bring benefit to me. So that can be a real red flag for us to check. When we find that we're feeling uncomfortable, just to check, well, do I have a broad perspective here, or am I really starting to get that pinpoint focus on just I, me, and mine? And then when that focus becomes so narrow, it naturally leads to anxiety and fears, because we start thinking, oh no, I'm not going to get what I want. I'm going to get what I don't want. I'll be separated from what I like. So see how that self-centered thought leads to fear and anxiety. If we make that connection, we'll have more motivation to catch it. When things don't work out the way we want them to, they often appear worse than they really are with the self-centered thought. The self-centered thought is a drama queen. He likes to make things a big deal, when really they're quite small when you look at them in a perspective of a larger view of what's going on. Cherishing our own happiness more than others, we become overly sensitive to everything concerned with ourselves. Personally, when I start noticing too many opinions or judgments, or I have to having things my way, like put the spatula. We all have our own spatula, don't we? When we become easily offended, or the slightest criticism becomes unbearable, that's an indication that the self-centered thought is quite active in our mind. And because we're looking out for our own welfare the most, then we're at risk at conflicts with others. So anger has a great opportunity to get involved in the show. And it causes us to overlook the impact that our actions have on others. We start seeking happiness at others' expense. And of course, we've all done this, and we're all trying to become more aware of this and really apply antidotes so that we do it less. Nobody would like to say, yes, I do things at other people's expense. That's who I want to be. Nobody would claim that. The self-centered attitude is the source of other afflictions too. It prevents us from genuinely respecting others. And so it can very easily lead to arrogance with people who we see as inferior to ourselves, competitiveness with people we see as equal, and jealousy with people who we perceive as better than us. So there again, it's leading to other afflictions. Really important to make that connection. And it enters every conflict that we have with others because we think we're right. We want our way. So it pops up at the most inconvenient times when we least expect it to. So does that does that help you to have just a slightly more clear picture of what we're dealing with here? So it's helpful to review these and to go over them so that we can identify it, understand it, and begin to apply antidotes. But I've talked long enough, so we'll talk about antidotes another day.